a consent box. So welcome to Amplify Science, Unit 4, focusing on evidence of learning. This again is a session for Year 1 teachers, assuming that you've attended an orientation and also have or had some exposure to the program. For those of you I have not met, my name is Reshma. I'm a professional learning specialist here. I've had the pleasure of supporting educators like yourself in implementing this program and hope to do the same for you today. Today's session is a 1-hour session. The first 1 hour is going to focus on Unit 4 through the lens of evidence of learning. And then the last half an hour we reserve for open Q&A for any questions that were left unanswered or anything else that you need support with related to Amplify Science. Just some norms for today. If you can go ahead and make sure you're oriented to the platform. Make sure you have a note catcher present if that helps you. And of course, we'd like to hear from you, but I do see this is a fairly, this is a small group, so the session might be a little bit shorter than usual. But of course, please do come off of mute if you have any questions or support needed, or you can feel free to use the chat. The goal for today's workshop is to really dive into evidence and learning in three-dimensionality of the 4th unit of 4th grade by exploring key assessment opportunities to really help us clarify connections between 3D learning and what evidence we can see of student progress. This is the session outline, the outline we hope we will use to achieve those objectives. We're going to begin by framing the day. And for that, if you can meet me on the Jamboard and provide an example of something you consider to be evidence of learning. I'll go ahead and put the Jamboard link in the chat now. And I'll give folks a few moments to post their response. And we'll come back together in 2 to 3. Thank you all for engaging in that. And from the examples you posted, you can see that there you are already using various forms of evidence to assess student progress, and they can be categorized into direct evidence, for example, student writing, explanations, arguments, end of unit assessments, and more indirect assessments, for example, listening in on student conversations. We're going to go ahead and begin the session with reviewing the 3 dimensions of your particular unit. And please know a version of this presentation will be available to you, but you might want to take notes. Here's a suggested format. We're going to go ahead and do a brief review of the Amplify Science approach. So if you recall, in Amplify Science, we begin by introducing a phenomena, real-world problem. And throughout the rest of the unit, students collect evidence from multiple sources. And as they do that through doing, talking, reading, writing, and visualizing, they craft a more and more complex explanation of the unit phenomena, and they do this in an iterative cycle. by doing, talking, reading, writing, and visualizing. And very often towards the end of the unit, they're given an opportunity to apply their knowledge to solve a different problem. So this session, folks, today is focused on Unit 4. So let's go ahead and see what the problem, phenomena, and student role is. So in Unit 4 of 4th grade, students are working in their role as marine scientists, and they have to figure out how mother dolphins communicate with their calves. And while doing so, they write a series of scientific explanations with diagrams to demonstrate their growing understanding of how sound waves travel. While they do this multimodally, they're also leveraging the 3 dimensions. So students are figuring out those core ideas through engaging in the same science and engineering practices as scientists do, through the lens of these big ideas called the cross-cutting concepts, which are not only specific to science, but other disciplines as well, like patterns, cause and effect, structure and function, and the like. So as I mentioned today, one of our goals is really to make connections between the 3 dimensions and evidence of student learning. And in order to do that, we're going to explore this resource that's available at every unit, for every unit, and it's called 3D Assessment Objectives. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to 4th grade. We'll go to Waves, Energy, and Information, which is that last unit of 4th grade. For your patience as I wait for this to load. Usually I find minimizing the number of tabs, I have quite a few tabs open, usually helps. And while that's loading, I do want to mention that this particular resource is found on the unit landing page of every K through 5 unit. I'm just going to try logging in again. Thank you for your patience. We're going to go to 4th grade, and today we are focusing on that last unit. There we go. Sometimes hitting the refresh button or closing out an extra tab like I just did usually helps. Thank you for your patience, folks, as I wait for this to load today. There we go, got it. So when you get to the unit landing page, it's that first resource under printable resources, 3D assessment objectives. Now, if we look at this particular resource, we'll see that there are the performance expectations for that particular unit on each page. So for this particular unit, there are 4 performance expectations, 5 rather, excuse me. And on each page, what it does is, we'll just go ahead and take a look at the first one, is it color codes the performance expectations into science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, and disciplinary core ideas. And it tells us not only which assessments in this particular unit assess that particular dimension, but other units across the grade bands as well. So for example, this first performance expectation, wave properties, is assessed in these particular assessments. So in order for us to really utilize this document purposefully, I'm going to ask you to engage in an exercise. If you can go to the same Jamboard link that I had dropped in the chat earlier, I'll go ahead and drop it in again. If it's that previous message right here. There you go. You'll see on the second page of the Jamboard something this looks like this. And if what we can do is use this particular document to identify assessment opportunities, specifically record the lesson and specific 3D aspect that it assesses. So for example, I'll go ahead and open it up again. One example would be, for example, patterns. Energy and matter is a cross-cutting concept. That I see here is actually not assessed in this particular unit. If I go further down, We can do, for example, asking questions and solving and defining problems, or developing and using models, or constructing explanations and designing solutions. These are all the science and engineering practices in blue. Or we can do, for green, the cross-cutting concepts. So for example, patterns, and focusing on this particular unit, is assessed in the pre-unit assessment in activity 4. So for example, I can write, use a sticky, patterns, pre-unit save. And I would put this under green. So the cross-cutting concept of patterns is assessed in the pre-unit assessment of this particular unit. Again, just reviewing how you would use this. I'll just go over this. If you look at the first page, folks, it gives you the labels, on the fly assessment, critical juncture, what the different acronyms stand for. And then on each page, it'll give you performance expectations and where the particular 3 dimensions can be assessed both in that unit and, if not in that unit, other units across the grade band. Please focus on waves, energy, and information. Identify a dimension and the lesson it's assessed in. Go ahead and post it here, and we'll come back together in 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you all for participating in that, and I hope that gave you a deeper understanding of where you can find the different dimensions assessed throughout this unit. And let's keep this in mind as we proceed through the rest of this session. I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions folks have that I might have missed in chat, or feel free to come off of mute. All right. Let's go ahead and explore another resource that further assists us in assessing the 3 dimensions, and this is actually found in the Global Navigation menu. We just explored a resource that explicitly outlines where the various dimensions are assessed throughout your unit. There's also another resource that gives you rubrics. Let's take a look. When you go to the Global Navigation menu, go ahead and go to Science Program Guide. And you want to go to Assessments. You want to go to Rubrics. And you'll see here, once you get here, there's various downloadable rubrics aligned to various science and engineering practices. The first one is constructing explanations, both the student and teacher facing. The next one is engaging in argument for evidence, both student facing and teacher facing. Then we have developing and using models, student facing and teacher facing. And then we have an information literacy rubric. If you can take a moment and access these right now, and again, meet me at the Jamboard, the third page. On the Jamboard, you'll see these two jams next. You'll see these two rubrics. If you can, on the Jamboard, and I'll go ahead and live navigate to it again, indicate what particular actions, occurrences, or artifacts would you be looking for as evidence for clear evidence of each of these particular indicators. Okay. And there's a place for you to note. Remember on Jamboard, not only can you use a sticky, you can also use a pen. So if you want to make connections, you can go ahead and do that and post your sticky. So I'll go ahead and give folks a few moments to do that. Take a look at each rubric and indicate what specific actions, occurrences, artifacts would you look for to indicate student progress along that indicator. Exercise, please keep in mind these are downloadable and adaptable. We'll pause to see if there's any questions. Next, we're going to engage in an exercise, kind of really taking together all these resources that I just introduced. Progress Build, and these are the assessment system and embedded resources, embedded informative assessment resources. If you can look over the assessment documents for both units and particularly focus on the standard connections. And think about how do the connections inform your search for evidence of student learning and their ability to figure things out. Particularly, again, you are looking at the assessment system document and the embedded formative assessments. And also remind yourself of the learning progression for this unit. After you review those, we're going to engage in an exercise to look at the particular assessment opportunities in this unit. So let's go ahead and take a few moments to do that. We're engaging in that. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drop this into the chat. You'll see that there's a place for each participant to enter their responses. And this right here is a graphic organizer that we're going to use to analyze as many of the assessment opportunities in this unit as possible. This, folks, is a collaborative working doc that you can come back to throughout the year. And what it has is, I'll go ahead and live navigate to it. It looks like this, and it also looks like what you see on my slide. There is a place for everyone. Each hummingbird right here is a placeholder for each participant. So go ahead and own one set of slides. They are the same slides. And please do put your name in the presenter notes. And you'll see here there are 4 sections on the first slide. The first one asks you to summarize. What do students learn in the lesson? Remember, you can find that from the lesson overview. What are the look-fors, now what, and the NYS SLS connections? So, for example, if I wanted to explore the very first formative assessment of this unit, I can see that it's in lesson 1.2, activity 3. Let's go ahead and navigate to that. 1.2, activity 3. Here's the actual lesson. I can get the look for and now what from here, from the assessment system doc, and then go back, find the lesson purpose from the last sentence of this unit, And the now what, look for summary, and the NGSS, NYSS, LS connections. Remember, give that a moment to load. And as that loads on your end, as you know, there's a section that is going to say look for and now what. And you can go ahead and summarize that. And I do apologize for my internet issues today. Underneath that, as you scroll down, you'll see the NYS SLS connection. So I'll give folks a few moments to go ahead and own a particular assessment and analyze the assessment along those dimensions. And also, if you can jot down, how would you adjust this assessment opportunity to make thinking more visible? What adjustments would you make considering your current instructional model? And any tips, strategies, or tools or ideas you have for assessment purposes in these varying instructional models. So if you can take a few moments and do that, and this is a place that we can all come back together continually throughout the year to further share our ideas. I do apologize for the loading errors, but once yours loads up, you'll see a look for and now what section here. Okay, thank you all for engaging in that. Again, this is a place that you can come back and really learn from each other's analyses of all the assessment opportunities and their connections to 3D learning and the various adaptations you can make. Let's talk briefly about differentiation. After you collect student data, remember, we have various places you can access differentiation ideas. I would focus on the lesson level differentiation right here. Remember, there are various sections. The first section is how can you assess, how is the lesson already designed to be supportive of diverse learners' strengths? We always have a specific differentiation strategy section for English learners, for those who need more support, and for those who need more challenge. And also, you can also look at the now what section of the on-the-fly formative assessment to also give you ideas on how to adjust instruction. And this is something that you had explored while you were engaging in your workspace activity. When considering remote hybrid learning and fluctuating instructional situations, what are some major considerations when you're implementing and utilizing the Amplify Science assessment system? Thank you all for sharing your ideas, and please do continue to add to the collaborative work doc so we can all continue to learn from each other. See if I missed any questions. And just to close out, I'd like to take a brief check of the room. Where do you locate the 3D assessment objective overview? Please type your answer. Yes, that is correct. C, unit level printable resources. Where can you find the differentiation notes for Unit 4? Yes, that's correct. The digital teacher's guide at the lesson level. And finally, where can you find assessment recommendations for at-home units? Yes, that's correct. Remember, the teacher overview gives you various assessment considerations. And if you can let me know if we met our workshop goals by typing in a letter that corresponds to your answer. Thank you all for doing that. And as we close out, New York City Resources site, remember, contains resources from today's PD session. Also sign up for upcoming PD. The Amplify Science Program Hub not only contains remote learning resources, but also various video tutorials on anything Amplify Science. And as always, our customer care is ready to assist you with both pedagogical and non-pedagogical questions. There are no more final questions. That officially ends our content for today's session. Thank you for joining and hope to see you soon.